Excellent. So fantastic. I'm joined for the Mastering Business Growth podcast with Matt DeHarty. And thank you so much for joining me, Matt. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to diving into this because you've had an incredible career so far and some massive names. So I'm really keen to get stuck in. But I think without further ado, I think I'd like to hand over to you and give everyone a little bit of an intro as to who you are and a little bit of background and what you're doing right now.
Thanks, Paul. I'm flattered by that. So I'm from the northeast of England, Newcastle. I've ended up moving back to Newcastle in the last couple of years, but as you say, I've moved around quite a bit in my time. To tell you about who I am, I grew up wanting to be a rugby player, which is rare for the northeast of England. Most people want to play football, but I wanted to be a rugby player, and that didn't work out for me. So the best thing I could do was to stay close to the game or close to sport, was to study something that would help me get there. I went to Northumbria University and studied sports psychology, and played for the university for a while, played for local rugby clubs, and then came out and thought, I have no idea what I want to do, but I know I want to be linked to the sport of rugby somehow. And at the time, the England rugby team was sponsored by Nike. And I inquired about how to get a job at Nike and found myself working for them in the Northeast. Their head office happened to be in Washington, just outside of Sunderland. And I managed to land a job there straight out of university and then didn't really look back. It was the perfect company for me. Spent 13 years there and traveled the world with that company. It was really, really great for my career, and I never thought I'd leave, to be perfectly honest.
It's incredible. I too am a Northumbria alumni as well.
Awesome.
And I'm very.
I didn't actually know that. Yeah.
No. I think you left a few years before I started. I started in 2008.
Yeah.
I think you left in 2005. Is that right?
Yeah, it sounds right. Yeah, you knew better than I do.
And the sports scene in the northeast was massive, even at Northumbria, because obviously being a traditional sort of polytechnic, they do make quite a big play for sports and the arts and other areas. So that's really, really good to know as well. But what I think I'm interested in is, I mean, obviously you're wearing the rugby style shirt today as well, so very much living and breathing rugby right now. But
I am, yeah.
I think what I'd like to get into is just maybe studying sports, like some of those attributes that you've taken from wanting to be a sportsman, a participant of sports. What is it that you think within playing sports that has made you successful and has made your career illustrious? Because obviously it doesn't happen by accident. Everyone could potentially get a job at Nike, but for you to stay there for so long and travel the world with them, what is it about you and your personality and your attributes that helped with that?
Oh wow, I like to think about this actually. I've got a young daughter now, and I'm thinking about whether or not I'm hoping that she'll play sport for this exact reason. Let me put it in how I experienced it. I don't necessarily know that this would apply to everybody, but first and foremost for me, it was confidence that it gave me. I remember being told that I hated the idea of playing rugby at first. I was forced to play it at school and used to come home crying and didn't want to play. And my first sort of sporting memory is being made to play rugby, but then scoring tries and being told that I was good at it. And that gave me that really, really early grounding of confidence, so that I'm actually good at something and I should stick with it. Mm. So confidence for sure. I think it's very easy to talk about communication and teamwork, and those are fairly obvious. But I would say rugby in particular is excellent at encouraging young sports people to be able to communicate really well. Mm. And that comes with, I mean, you've got opposition players really trying to take your head off during a game and you still need to concentrate while extremely tired and communicate with 15 other people around the pitch. And that communication under pressure, being able to hold your composure and being able to do that is strong. And that's on the field. And I always like to remind people about off the field as well. The communication is also the encouragement of, somebody from the team, the captain would stand up and talk and thank the opposition. And I don't know if these rituals still exist at local club rugby, but I really hope they do. Handing over ties or shields and doing presentations, thanking the opposition, thanking the referees, those sort of things, those really early experiences formed who I am today, 100%. I ended up becoming a captain of rugby teams that gave me more confidence and more opportunity to practice speaking and practice presenting myself and presenting the club that I represent, or that could end up being the company that you represent. So for me personally, confidence and communication were the probably the two biggest things. I'd expect that most rugby players or most sports people would say discipline is part of it. Being able to be stick at something. You won't be good at any sport if you don't have the discipline to stick at it. Sport can also teach you perseverance. I think it's probably the right word, because it's most of them aren't easy. The discipline to turn up to training and to do the practice and to do the things that people don't want to do, but to persevere after losing and setbacks as well, and coming back after injuries and things like that. Those are slightly different things, but I think those are probably broad generic sports characteristics that you're going to get from somebody that has a sporting background.
There's so many things to unpack there, though. There's firstly the confidence piece, and I think about confidence a lot. I did performance. I did performing arts at uni, so okay. But confidence is a big part of that. But I tend to split confidence into two pieces. We've got situational confidence, and then you've got evidential confidence. People feel they need, because confidence is a bundled term, right? It's it's loads of little things that make confidence what it is. And I would argue and say that for someone who wanted to, was made to go onto a rugby pitch, you need courage. Yeah. You need sort of like visualization of what's going to happen on the pitch potentially. What are the worst case scenarios? What could happen? Oh, I could score the winning try, or I could get my head taken off. Those kinds of things. So we've got situational confidence, which has to happen before you try something new. And then you've got evidential confidence. So you went on the pitch, survived, realized you weren't made of glass. You scored tries, got on with people, and that gave you the evidential confidence because you've done it and then wanted to repeat it to then go on and do it again. And I think that's really, really interesting. And for anybody who's in a business and, starting something from scratch or whatever, you don't need to have it all figured out before you walk onto the pitch. You just need a bit of courage, a bit of visualization, a bit of, sort of like compensating it in your mind. Would you agree with that, or would you add anything to that? The courage piece makes me think of like the physical nature of rugby, and like it possibly isn't for everybody, although it claims to be. I'd suggest that it can be for everybody, but yeah, it does take some courage to actually go and put yourself, they say put your body on the line, and that kind of, it is a physical confrontational game, which takes some literal courage to play. But yeah, I love the way you put that around the two different types of confidence. The first thing that you asked me what I would add, the first thing that it reminded me of is I have this, when I'm public speaking, it was typically it would be, when I say public, it would be a presentation at work. I used to have this technique, I guess, where I would record myself saying it out loud on my phone before the event, and watch it back, and it gave me that how did you say, experiential confidence of I
I didn't have to wait for the thing to happen, or evidential. Sorry, yeah, I didn't have the evidential confidence of, oh, this actually looked okay, and I used to take confidence from that. So yeah, 100% agree with that. And then just looking back at other games you've played or other presentations you've given to put you into the right frame of mind as you go back. You mentioned visualization as well. I mean, there's countless techniques from that I literally studied in sports psychology that are embedded early when you're playing sport as well. I think those techniques, that maybe not characteristics, but they're things that you learn to do. Visualization is one that's so second nature to me now. I almost can't imagine not doing it, and I'd be surprised if people aren't doing it just through their daily lives. Like even when I go to a local gym in Newcastle, and it's like a CrossFit gym, and I before workouts, like the night before, I'm looking at the workout and I'm reading it through, and I'm literally imagining doing the workout the next morning. I know it's inconsequential. I'm not competing. It's just me going to the gym to work out, but it's something that I do to prepare naturally. So that has to be down to my time in sport for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Again, there's loads of things we could go into there. Like, of course, there's so many things you can take from that and put it into other areas of life generally. But when we're looking at your career in business and how you've helped add value to businesses and help them grow, like, are there like 2 or 3 things potentially that you've taken from, either playing or studying sport that you think then they might be just second nature to you? You might not even think about them every day, but for some people might look at Matt DeHarty and go, you've got these 3 advantages from playing sport. Do you ever think about what those things might be?
No, I don't think about it, but it would be easy for me to say communication. I've just mentioned that. I think, or something that I value, that I hope other people value in me, is being easy to work with. And you could maybe say that's teamwork, but I think you can't underestimate the value of having a good group of people around you that are cohesive and want to work together and are easy and not abrasive, and you don't necessarily have to get on with everybody. You don't need to be friends with everybody that you work with or work for. But there's always give and take there's relationships in every business, whether it's tiny or huge. The relationships in the time I was at Nike, working in an enormous workforce, one tiny cog in a huge environment. And then when I moved to Gymshark 6 years ago, it was much smaller environment, and I felt a massive difference. And it was the sort of place where you would know everybody's name now, and you'd be able to recognize their face, and the fact that you knew what they did for a living, you knew what their actual role was in the company, and that was a huge shift for me. I think being easy to work with is massively important. The other one that I've spent time talking about and thinking about in the past is cultural differences. And it was a mentor of mine mentioned it to me when I was working in the States, and he said to me he said, Matt, you won't realize this. And sorry, I met this gentleman because he was actually from the Northeast as well, and worked in Portland, Oregon. And I didn't.
Small world.
Yeah, crazy. And I'd never actually met him, and somebody introduced us, and we had coffee, and he talked about the fact that he said that you won't realize this, Matt, but it's like you're playing an away game every day. Whereas, obviously you play home and away games in a league. And when I came, I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I came back to Gymshark, it felt like I was playing at home again.
Yeah,
the conversations felt easier. I wasn't surrounded by Geordies and people from the Northeast, but I had most people around me were from the Midlands, and they were British, and English was their first language, and that wasn't the case necessarily in a company like Nike. When I worked in Amsterdam, most people, English wasn't their first language. Those cultural differences from place to place were, I think, I'd not noticed them as much until I came back to the UK and everything felt easier. So I think that's a nice sporting analogy, that it felt like playing at home again.
I love that analogy, but again as well, no, but to it actually. Sorry, I don't know what I said, but it makes me immediately think of like being quite tribal. Like we're quite tribal beings, aren't we? And like you know, when we're amongst our, and I've got to be very careful with the way I word this, but like as humans, we are quite tribal, and when we're amongst something that's familiar to us and we feel on home ground, we feel a bit more comfortable. We feel a bit, we can express ourselves a little bit more naturally and freely. But when you move on to the away game or onto foreign soil, quite literally, it can feel harder. We need to kind of go back to basics of communication. We need to understand nuance. It's like speaking, in some respects, and quite literally, it's speaking different languages. So our communication has to be so much on point that there can't be any room for misunderstanding. There can't be any room for, did I explain that properly in a way that they understand? And it was something that, actually, weirdly, that's something that I got taught quite early on. We have that, we have the saying, don't we, of, speak as though you'd like to be spoken to. But actually, it's kind of untrue. It's like speak to people how they want to be spoken to, because otherwise you don't get your point across and you can't find mutual ground. But that's really interesting. You've kind of moved on before being prompted there, because I was going to ask you about your time at Gymshark and how that move from Nike to Gymshark felt, and you've kind of expressed that a little bit. But it might be good to just sort of unpack that a little bit more, and because obviously Gymshark is a name that everybody knows, probably as much as we know the name Nike now as well, and they've become a real sort of home brand, and planting the flag for the United Kingdom for sure. And Ben Francis is an incredibly, inspirational entrepreneur and leader for his age as well. I mean, that's just crazy, but. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your time at Gymshark and how you found that.
Yeah, it was a wonderful 6 years. The reasons for leaving Nike and coming back to the UK were sort of business strategic reasons. At the time within the sportswear industry, people were talking about direct to consumer, e-commerce. You saw a rise of brands and companies using social media and influencer marketing. I'd been working within Nike, which is really a footwear company that sells a lot of apparel. I was an apparel guy within that industry, and moving to a true apparel company was the right thing for me to do. My personal passions for rugby that got me into it set me off on that initial path into Washington at the start with England Rugby. I'd stopped playing and I'd become more of a guy that goes to the gym a lot. By that point in time, I'd done an Ironman triathlon. I'd tried strongman and weightlifting and CrossFit and all of the things. And there was a UK brand with a young entrepreneur and growing fast and direct to consumer and apparel based, and the subject matter was gym product. And when I discovered it, I thought it has to be the company that I'll move to next. Yeah. It would be very difficult for me to have moved from Nike to Adidas or Puma or Under Armour. It would have just felt like more of the same and almost like quite loyal. It would have felt wrong to go to one of those big competitors, but to go to Gymshark, it felt like a completely different space. So those were my reasons for moving back to the UK to do that. It was for the role, for the job, for the company, and working there. As I said, it was culturally just, I felt like a breath of fresh air. I'm surrounded by people that love working out, surrounded by British people. And that doesn't mean that I have to reiterate, I lived and worked in lots of different places. It just felt easier. And it was so nice to sit down. Let me tell you like a cultural story that when you walk into the cafeteria, they call it refuel. It's like an esoteric phrase, but refuel is where you go to eat your lunch. And when you walk into refuel, you could end up sitting with anybody, including, you mentioned Ben. It could be Ben, it could be someone you've never met before, it could be one of the senior chiefs, etc., or an intern, and you sit down with whoever, and you can sit and talk to people, and that just felt so different from Nike, where more often than not, I would sit at my desk. I would just eat at my desk, or I would quickly grab something and go, or it felt much more personal and much more of a community there. And that's not a knock on Nike. It's just the size of Nike just made it very difficult to do.
It's really funny actually, because just the other day I was speaking to a guy who was the CFO for the European headquarters for Nike, and he's from the Northeast as well. Right. A guy called Roger. And he said, it's like you had, even at the head office in Oregon, like you had sales at the bottom, finance in the middle, marketing at the top, and all this kind of thing. Yeah. And it was very, very, for a while, quite segregated. Well, not segregated, that's probably the wrong word, but you have your groups, you have
it becomes divided. It's not, nobody's driving a wedge between anybody. It just naturally happens.
Yeah, and we find that in quite a lot of companies, actually, to be honest.
I bet. Yeah. No, my time at Gymshark was brilliant. The other thing that I'll add is that I reflect on leaving Nike and moving to what is a smaller company, but it's absolutely huge, really. It felt. I look back and think, if I'd had a perfect career for another 10 years, maybe even 20 years at Nike, I wouldn't have had the same experiences that I did from that 5 or 6 years at Gymshark. Because really from day one, my scope was so much broader than it was at Nike. I had a very specialized, fine-tuned job that I did as well as I possibly could at Nike. And then when I came to Gymshark, I was doing a lot more and a lot broader role. And that wasn't just because I became a little bit more senior within the context of the company. It was just the types of tasks and things that I was doing on a day-to-day basis, which brought with it so much more engagement. It made those 6 years absolutely brilliant.
When you moved to Gymshark, did it still have that startup feel? Did it still have that kind of, or was it, this is a much bigger company than what I thought? Or
well, yeah. So now that I'm literally trying to do my own startup, I would say no, because lots of the processes had formed, etc. But in comparison to Nike, it felt like what I had imagined what I would imagine a startup would feel like. I had never worked or experienced a startup, but words like chaos come to mind, where it compared to the systems and process that were in place at Nike, when I came to Gymshark, I was kind of mind blown at how things were done there. I was like, there's so much that needs to be put into place. And that felt good to be able to add value and say, here are the things that you need to start thinking about doing over the next few years. So yes and no. Now with my new perspective, I think, it had obviously come a long way. When I joined, I think it was probably about 7 years old at that point in time. So it certainly wasn't in a startup. If I remember rightly, the unicorn status and the investment from General Atlantic was around about 1.5 to 2 years after I joined. Right. So it was certainly formed at that point in time. It literally wasn't a startup anymore.
Yeah, no. The reason I ask about the sort of startup feel is that it's a huge transition for companies to go from that sort of hustle and chaos as you say, and sometimes even with big investment and more a much larger customer base, bigger brand equity, all of that kind of thing, sometimes the culture can still feel startup like.
Yeah,
And
okay.
and that's kind of why I asked that, really, just because well, one, because I feel it would be valuable to know, but two, just morbid curiosity. Did it
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like that? But and you mentioned now, so you've gone from Nike to Gymshark, and now you're doing your own thing. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I've decided to start my own company. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. I'd like to think that the the values and the culture of rugby, as we talked about, are part of me, and it's taught me a lot. And I don't think that there's a brand out there right now that's doing a really good job for rugby players. Um, there are replica brands out there. There's big companies that sell rugby jerseys, for, like, on field deals. So they sponsor a club, and then you can sell the replica jersey. There's lots of people doing that. I'm not interested in being that rugby brand. I want to create a a brand around the culture and lifestyle of rugby. You mentioned I'm wearing a rugby jersey. I see rugby jerseys around me constantly now, and it's sort of been, I don't know if what the right word is, maybe plagiarized by fashion. It's been adopted, maybe is a better word, adopted by fashion. But I see people wearing rugby jerseys now, day in, day out, including celebrities, and then they're not wearing products from a rugby brand. And I'd like to try and bring that back to the sport. That's sort of the gap that I see. Uh, I've been playing around with that idea for a while, but that was always internal thoughts. It was just, and I never knew what to do with it. But in January, a former teammate, a lad called Tom, who, he and I were already pretty fit and like to work out, etc. So we were thinking about New Year's resolutions. And we said our New Year's resolution would be my commitment to him was, I'm going to write an article every week. Those in that series of 5 articles, one of them got picked up by a social media account called Counterruck, and they'd posed the question to me, could you write about why there's no lifestyle brands in rugby? And that just light bulb went off. I thought, why am I not doing that? I have to admit, at that point in time, I was thinking about what my next step was after Gymshark. As I said, I loved working for Gymshark, but the main reason was that I'd moved back to Newcastle, which is, as I'm sure you know, for anyone that doesn't, it was a 4.5 hour drive on a weekly basis to get there, and then I'd stay a couple of nights in the hotel and come back, which was it was a bit of a burden for me. I have a young daughter, and it was always going to be a point where I need to move back to Newcastle. So I was playing around about the idea of trying to do my own thing anyway. So the brand, I should say the company, I don't really think I have built a brand yet, but the company is called Old Novo, which is the word old and the Latin for new. I like the play on words of old and new together. I think nostalgia and retro vintage sportswear is having a moment, and I don't see that going anywhere. So it seemed like a great name for me. Anybody from Newcastle might also recognize that Nova Castrian is Newcastle. So somebody from Newcastle, and somebody that went to the school that I went to is typically called an Old Novo. So it has a bunch of meanings to me, but also works well as a brand name.
That sounds amazing. Like I tend to agree with you actually about the
Good.
there's not much originality within rugby styled apparel. Like there's not much. I immediately think of something like Cotton Traders, or
Yeah.
I'm even thinking
Yeah.
of things like Henry Lloyd, even like the old
Yeah.
style rugby shirts, and I tend to think about Ralph Lauren as well. Like because it that I guess there are a lot of perceptions around rugby and rugby union specifically, around being sort of a high class sport, and the barrier to entry. Just a sort of personal story for me, I used to play rugby union when I was 16, 17 to a decent level, but not. And it was an injury that ended up stopping me from playing. But the people that I was surrounded by were, I'd say, 60 to 70% were private school, and it was.
Yeah.
And there's me, secondary school, state school, kid playing around. But I can honestly say, being on the pitch with those, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know.
No, you wouldn't know.
And that is something that has kind of removed that stigma from my mind, in terms of that private school, state school divide. And I think that's quite important for yeah, and I think it's testament to the sport actually once you're in it, because once you've got that jersey on, you're equal. And you, like you say at the beginning, when you're in the clubhouse, those traditions were still around when I was playing, even at 17 years old. The coach made us, we even, we were there having, the post-match meal with them all. We're mixed up, we're chatting. Some of them are still friends now, but coming back to Old Novo, I definitely see that as a gap. Like, I definitely understand that, and I think people wear rugby jerseys as a fashion item, but potentially without really understanding a little bit about it, but behind it.
Yeah, I've like really nerded out on rugby jersey history over the last 3 or 4 months, and you named some great brands there that are doing a really good job. And it's not that there aren't any. There are lots of people trying to represent rugby well. The biggest rugby brand that's a rugby brand for me is Canterbury Rugby. I mean, when you were studying up here, I'm sure you'll have seen people walking around in Canterbury tracksuits as students.
I had a pair. Only because they were fleece lined.
Oh yeah,
and Newcastle's cold.
That's very true. Very true. It's the clothes that people wear represent who they are. I very quickly talked about CrossFit earlier. I remember moving to Amsterdam and joining a CrossFit box, and my gym wardrobe changed rapidly because you match the people that you're around. You want to fit in, and that happened when I played rugby. It happened when I started training for my triathlon. It happened. It's not just about performance. I want to be clear. It's not, I functionally need these things. You start to mirror the people around you. You do it at work, of course. I find that fascinating, and there isn't Canterbury as a brand does a good job of people that play rugby.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there needs to be something for the people that used to play rugby or still recognize the values and see themselves as rugby players in their hearts.
It's part of their identity, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And I unashamedly, I also think, I think the rugby brands that are out there now can do a better job of the actual apparel. That's my career speaking now. I think we can do. There's more we can do with design and materials and fits to elevate the game again. So yeah, it's all ahead of me right now. It's easy words for me to speak, but lots of work to do. But I have to say, I've gone from what literally is the biggest sportswear company in the world to working in probably the smallest sportswear company in the world.
Yeah.
In the space of 20 years, and I've worked my way sort of down the funnel, and it's unbelievably fascinating. Every conversation I'm having, I'm learning new stuff. Like, as I said, small cog in a huge machine at Nike. In the last week, I'm teaching myself stuff about white balance and color grading for videos so I can make social media. I'm learning Illustrator from scratch, even though I knew countless people that worked on Illustrator all day long. I knew exactly what it was as a tool, but never touched it. And all of a sudden, I'm now doing that, and it's there's something about working for myself that's just again entirely engaging and addictive to be able to go and try new things and work out what works. And I realize that I'm probably playing at the moment, and it's a sort of it's a free shot right now. The circumstances that I'm in has meant that I've been able to take a go at it and see where it leads to. I am doing some consulting as well around the role, so that I can pay the bills and allow me to keep getting after this passion of mine. But thoroughly enjoying it, Paul. I think it's been brilliant.
It sounds like, and I don't mean this to sound sort of airy fairy or anything, but like it sounds like this is what you were meant to do. This is what you were meant to do, but you needed to go to Nike, to Gymshark to learn the skills, to stack those skills and to get that experience so that you can bring everything back to what is essentially your origin story, which is playing rugby. Yeah. So it's like you've gone from being on the side of the physical pitch to now being on the side of the pitch of a new venture. Not to sound romantic about it, but what's really cool about this is that you can see that it's a straight line all the way through. The straight line all the way through, and it's not linear. It's not a linear journey, but it's like from point A to point B, this is where you are now. And everything has been building up potentially to this moment. And yeah, of course, we always have to keep the lights on. We always have to keep the bills rolling and what have you. And we do what we need to do. But sitting where you are now, you've got that experience, you've got that passion. It sounds like you've found what the Japanese call eureka guy, which is basically what can you get paid for and what have you, and you're going to bring all those learnings to it. But it sounds fascinating, and I for one am definitely going to be interested to see where you take this, and you can carve out a very lucrative and small market for yourself there. And it sounds like it's one of those industries and one of those corners of the retail market that hasn't been changed for a little while. So best of luck with it.
I hope so. Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I hope so. I'm also I've literally come home, not figuratively. I've to the sport of rugby, but also to Newcastle, and I'm a proud Geordie, and one of the other reasons for considering it is like I know now that I want to be here around family and friends while my daughter grows up. So it's the big sportswear brands that I've worked for before just don't exist in the Northeast. So it's a literal, why don't I create one myself and start now? It'd be on my wildest dreams to grow to that size of company of even like half of what Gymshark is. But it would, if there's something that I can do that I'm passionate about, as you said, I love the Ikigai reference, by the way. If I can do anything that will fulfill me, make me engage and enjoy it, like keep learning, and do that from my hometown would be brilliant. We'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but enjoy it, because otherwise you'll have regretted not doing it, and that's the main thing. And people talk about success and freedom, and everyone's version of success is very, very subjective and probably limited to their relationship with money and things like that. But ultimately, you're living success now because you're back in the hometown that you love. You're around family. You're doing something that you're passionate about, and no doubt all of those three things together is what will make it work. So I don't see why you have the foundations for success there, clearly.
I hope so.
Matt, I've really enjoyed this chat. It's been really, really good, and
awesome.
We'll definitely have to exchange some Newcastle and Northumbrian stories for sure. But
we definitely will. Yeah.
Where can people find you, and when can they find out about Old Novo, and is it live, or when is it going live?
The website's set up and live. It's basically a holding page right now. It's called oldnovo.com. I am on yeah, far too much social media at the moment, but it's Old Novo on Instagram. If you go there, you'll find me talking about the journey. And at the moment, I'm trying lots of different things. I'm talking about the link between fashion and rugby. It's great. You can see pretty much daily 1-minute videos about me talking about that, talking about what's happening in the sport of rugby itself, and then also the journey of me creating a brand. So the product will go live. The first drop, the jersey that I'm wearing right now, will go live within a month on that website, oldnovo.com.
Brilliant, Matt. Really enjoyed it, and I'll be checking that out immediately. So, but
thanks so much.
Thanks for your time, and look forward to seeing where it goes.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. All the
Cheers,
best,
buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.